Hey guys, welcome back to my watercolor channel, and today we are painting a small Halloween gnome. What I did first is adding some masking fluid onto the head because I thought it would give a nice structure there, and then I mixed some phthalo blue with some opera rose to get this very beautiful purple, and I started with a very light wash and adding a little bit more of blue so it's darker, and I don't need to do much later on, but it looks actually quite good already. And add some purple as well onto the suit of the gnome. Then next to the gnome there is a small pumpkin, so I mixed some orange out of deep yellow and some cadmium red, and then I spread it carefully there as well. I work here with a flat wash, and here I add more red to the orange mixture, so I have already a nice wash of two colors. I continue to mix some green because we have some meat-eating plants next to the gnome and the pumpkin, and it's made out of phthalo blue and some lemon yellow, but I add a little bit more of the blue there, so I don't want it to be too bright. I also added a little bit of a red onto the plant, so more than one color, and now painting the nose. The nose contains basically the same colors as the pumpkin, but with much less of the red. I continue to add some brown to the shoes. So just spreading the color there. And then I continued to mix much more orange, but I thought I continue to add some green onto the mittens of the Halloween gnome. We don't actually really celebrate Halloween in Finland, but there are quite a few decorations and some sweets. I think those cakes with spiders on look quite funny, or spider webs. But generally we don't have kids going door from door to collect sweets. It's just something you do at home. I emphasize the nose of the gnome, and then I continue with the head, so just adding some shadowing parts there to have a nice contrast. You need probably a much thinner brush, and then I continue to add some blue color to the beard. I wanted to have a little bit of a blurry background, and I add some deep yellow to the moon, and then spreading as well some indigo blue. And the light of the moon is mixing with the blue as well, which means that I have wetted the paper beforehand, and I try to be quite careful not to overpaint the gnome and the pumpkin. It would be quite a pity to add too much color there. I use a big brush so that I can spread the color quite easily, and then using some of the purple that I have used for the head into the background. I wanted to add more structure to the background, so here adding more plants as well. And while the paper is wet, I'm able to add some of the green there, but it's not too wet that the paint is spreading too much. I wanted to have a light brown color onto the ground. And I think emphasizing a little bit more of the plant, and then I continue. What I like to do is to add some of the orange underneath the pumpkin while the ground is still wet. The orange is spreading nicely. I thought that the pumpkin looks a bit too pale, so I add here more orange. And it looks much better. Then adding more darker purple to emphasize the clothes or the shadowy parts of the clothes. And then underneath the nose. I add some eyes and a smile to the pumpkin, but the pumpkin has been still quite wet, so that the contrast isn't there as such. Underneath the gnome, I add more shadow of a brown color, as well as some brownish underneath the pumpkin. Now I have waited till everything has dried, and I thought that it needs a bit more contrast, so I do again adding more shadow underneath the gnome and the pumpkin, and now I'm able also to emphasize the eyes, nose and smile. Now it's much more clear. And then adding here more darker green. It's really just adding a few details to emphasize the pumpkin and the different parts of the gnome, like the shoes or underneath the clothes. So although this is obviously not realistic painting, but it really adds so much. It elevates the small illustration. And then adding some stems to the flowers, and also in between, so one of those plants is facing the viewer, and I added there some darker parts. So you can see those little teeth. And then more structure to the ground. Also, I thought maybe it needs a light layer of purple where the wrinkles of the clothes are. So it's not very dark, but it really gives a nice structure. And then I have here spiders. So one spider on the ground and one spider hanging from the head. And then one spider onto the head. So it's rather cute than too spooky. But yes, that was it. So thank you for watching and remember to subscribe. Bye.